Good morning, church. My name is Jay Carr, and I'm the senior pastor of UMCL. I'm glad you've joined us today. We're blessed to be celebrating together the Lord's table. As we celebrate Holy Communion, we look forward to the heavenly banquet at which every tongue and nation will gather. Jesus described it as an exceptionally inclusive experience. Today, we also celebrate America's 247th birthday. We give thanks for the blessing of this nation as we ask ourselves what responsibilities these blessings require of us. According to newspaper columnist Matt Sorgel, the only thing that unites Americans today is funny animal videos. So as we reflect on America's 247th birthday in the context of being faithful disciples of Jesus Christ, I thought we'd start with something that at least most of us could agree on. Eugene, roll the tape.
Trying. Oh.
Huh?
You got the ocean!
Oh my god! 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 Oh my god!
Hi!
It goes on for hours. We have to stop somewhere. Funny animal videos are all over the internet. They rack up millions of views each day. People spend hours watching them. So maybe Matt Sorgel is right. This is where we need to start to build unity within the United States. It's no surprise to any of us here that we are living in what some suggest is the most polarized time in American history since the Civil War. We've seen this played out just this last week as the Supreme Court issued rulings that one side celebrated and the other side condemned. Our division runs deep. So as followers of Jesus Christ, celebrating Americans' history of being a shining example to the rest of the world, how do we respond to this current dilemma? First, we need to be clear that democracy by its nature is messy. The United States was deliberately set up in a way that we could express different opinions without fear of political retribution. That's what makes us America. But today, our society is so divided, politically and demographically, that we're beyond having different opinions. We're beyond finding unity through funny cat videos. According to the Pew Research Center, these days, Democrats and Republicans no longer stop at disagreeing with each other's ideas. Increasingly, they deny each other's facts, disapprove of each other's lifestyles, stay out of each other's neighborhoods, impugn each other's motives, doubt each other's patriotism, can't stomach each other's news sources, and bring different value systems to such core social institutions as religion, marriage, and parenthood. It's as if they belong not to rival parties, but alien tribes. And That's dangerous, according to Pew. When we move from arguing over an issue and begin to accuse the other side of destroying America, the very fabric of our nation is at risk of being torn apart. Every Republican I listen to blames the Democrats, and every Democrat I listen to hates on the Republicans. Instead of a joint chorus of, I'm proud to be an American, it's more like, proud to be a Democrat or proud to be a Republican, with each side accusing the other side of being anti-American. As a nation, we've lost the commitment of our founders to entertain dialogue and compromise. Let's not forget that our very Constitution was worked out as a compromise. But today, there is no room for compromise in American politics, and it's dividing our nation. We have to stop blindly following ideologies that pit one side against the other. We have to stop labeling the other side as evil. We have to stop saying the other group is going to destroy this nation. We have to understand that the person who votes differently than we do is not our enemy. The person who has a different skin color is not our enemy. The immigrant is not our enemy. Those with different sexual orientations are not our enemies. Transgender and non-binary people are not our enemies. I expect most of you have heard about the controversy over Bud Light's support of the LGBTQ community. It began when transgender social media influencer Dylan Mulvaney, who has nearly 13 million followers across TikTok and Instagram, posted a video in partnership with Bud Light. There was so much outrage from conservatives that sales of Bud Light plummeted and Anheuser-Busch stock price fell 20%. Bomb threats were received at Budweiser factories and delivery trucks were shot at, all causing the parent company to pull back from its support of the LGBTQ community. All because a trans woman posted a video of herself drinking Bud Light. Friends, we can't go on like this as a nation. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Now, some of you are saying, Jay, you've gone to meddling. What does the polarization of our politics have to do with the church? Why should the church care? Well, there are several reasons, but perhaps the most critical is because the church in America has contributed to this national divide. We should care because the polarization we see in our politics has moved into our house and now lives here. We see it right now in the United Methodist Church. Thousands of congregations, yes, thousands of United Methodist congregations are leaving the denomination because the church has been unwilling to lovingly listen to those who have different opinions. Congregations are withdrawing from the United Methodist Church nearly every day. The most recent number I have, which is a couple of weeks old, shows that 6,182 United Methodist congregations have left the denomination. That's more than 20%, twice as many as predicted. All because the church is unwilling to listen to each other. All because we are unwilling to love people who disagree with us. All because we deem that those who disagree with us are evil. The current climate of polarization has permanently altered our denomination. It has made us less loving and weaker. And we have to ask, is our nation headed to that same level of division? Is there a way to end the vicious cycle of anger and hatred? How can we prevent spiraling further down into destructive patterns that tear us apart when we live in a culture of bullying and abuse? Well, Jesus answered that question nearly 2,000 years ago. He said, flat out, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Our scripture lesson this morning is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, and it's typically identified as part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Would you read with me? You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? For Jesus, it's not enough to stop hating our enemies. If you want to experience the blessing of God, you have to go further than that. You have to love your enemy. To love those who love you offer no spiritual reward. Even sinners do that, Jesus said. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Now remember that in commanding us to love our enemies, Jesus didn't mean that we should necessarily support them in what they do. To love our enemies does not mean we have to agree with them or even automatically become good friends with them. What it does mean is to offer the concentrated goodness of God. That's what it means to express love, to offer the consecrated goodness of God. When you express love to your family or friends, that's what you do. You offer a concentrated goodness of God. Whether that's through a kind word or an act of service or spending time with them, you are conveying goodness to them. And that's what Jesus is telling us to do with our enemies, to convey the concentrated goodness of God to them. It's not enough to say, I don't hate you. It's not enough to practice benign indifference. Jesus said, love your enemies. Offer the goodness of God to those who seem to oppose you or your opinions or your values. Loving our enemies means that the cycle of hate, the cycle of deepening division, stops with us. You can be angry with a person for what they do, and yet still love them. Okay, Jesus told us to love our enemies, but how? How do you convey goodness upon someone we feel negative toward? How can we be angry with the person for what they do and still yet love them? How can we use love to overcome our polarization? Let me give 4 steps to get us started. As we grow in love, we will find additional ways to do this. But first, we have to decide to love. Love is, at its core, a decision, not an emotion. We can't wait until we feel love for the person to love them. We can't even wait until we feel like forgiving the person. If we wait, we will probably never get there. We have to make a choice to let go of hate and embrace love. If we don't start with a decision to love, we will never get any farther. Decide to love. Decide to convey goodness. Second, practice forgiveness. In a polarized society, forgiveness becomes even more critical. Holding grudges and harboring bitterness only perpetuates the cycle of division. We all love knowing that God has forgiven us. But for some reason, it's hard for us to forgive others. But if our sin is forgivable, other people's sin is forgivable too. Unforgiveness is a burden that keeps us chained to our past and incapable of reaching our future. But as we seek to forgive others, you have to remember the people with whom we struggle, well, they probably think they're right, and they don't need to be forgiven. So this forgiveness is not about letting them off the hook. This forgiveness is about us. It's about letting go of our grudges. It's about being freed from those chains that hold us down. This forgiveness work is about us, not about them. Third, try to see the world through their eyes. This is called empathy, something we all value and strive for. We love to offer empathy to those who we feel sorry for, but not so much for those with whom we disagree. To love those around us, we have to make an effort to understand their perspective and experiences. We need to listen with an open heart, seeking to bridge the gap between us and them, rather than widening it further. Empathy helps us to see beyond the labels we often place on others and recognize their humanity. And finally, for this morning, we must engage in respectful dialogue. Meaningful dialogue is essential for fostering understanding and finding common ground. We should engage in conversations with those who hold different opinions, and it should be done with respect, humility, and a willingness to learn. Listening doesn't always lead to agreeing, but it does pave the way for mutual respect. Remember the Bible's definition of love from 1 Corinthians 13? Love is patient and kind. not envious or boastful or rude. Love does not demand its own way. Love keeps no record of wrong. Jesus gave the commandment to love like this, to treat our enemies with patience and kindness, to not be boastful or rude, to not demand our own way, and to keep no record of wrong. I don't know about you, but that's not how I see our nation dealing with its conflicts. Love is not about feeling affection. It's about how we treat one another. For Jesus, it's not enough to stop hating your enemy. Jesus said, love your enemy. He said to love those who love you offers no spiritual reward. Even the sinners do that. Jesus showed this kind of love through his own life and ministry. He befriended tax collectors, sinners, and outcasts, showing us that love knows no boundaries. And the sacrament of Holy Communion is a perfect example of this. This meal is a call to unity in Jesus. It's his table. It's his meal. When we come to the Lord's table, Jesus doesn't see Democrats or Republicans. He doesn't see liberals or conservatives. He doesn't see Methodists or Baptists. When we come to the table, Jesus sees people who need forgiveness. He sees children of God.